You know I've raved about Outer before, and I love my Outer sofa, outdoor dining table, and chairs. I've had them for over a year, and let me tell you, they've been through everything, from rainstorms to scorching sun, and still look brand new.
That's because Outer makes outdoor furniture that's actually designed for the outdoors. From using incredibly durable and sustainable materials to developing innovative solutions like the Outer Shell cover, which protects my sofa and dining table against dust, debris, and dirt. No more soggy cushions or dusty tabletops. My Outer setup is always clean, dry, and ready to be enjoyed anytime I want.
Head to liveouter.com/thefounderhour to see Outer's range of outdoor furniture, fire pits, and accessories. The Founder Hour listeners get an exclusive 10% off for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply.
So elevate your outdoor space with Outer. That's liveouter.com/thefounderhour. Michelle Wahler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Great to have you. We want to chat everything all about Beyond Yoga and what you've done there. But before we do that, let's take it back a little bit. Talk about your early days. I think you grew up in Maryland?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Maryland, what life was like for you growing up. And then, we'll get into it.
So I grew up in Maryland, as you said. I grew up in Potomac, Maryland, which is kind of like a suburb right outside of DC. It's a great place to live if you guys haven't ever been there. It's beautiful to visit. But, I grew up spending a lot of time with my dad, who was an entrepreneur. And he started a business and, even before I was born. And, I remember every single, day he'd come home from work, we'd talk about his work. We'd spend the weekends, I'd go with him to go on his store visits. If it snowed, he was really unhappy. Most people were really happy we were going to have a snow day. But in our family, that was like a really disappointing experience because we knew sales were going to be down that day.
Mm-hmm. What was his business?
He had a music business. So he sold CDs. It started off as Kent Mill Records.
Mm-hmm.
And then when CDs came out, they pivoted to Kent Mill Music. And then when, MP3s were on the rise and Napster and all of that, I also got to watch my father lose his business, which was an incredibly painful thing to watch. I think it was a lot harder for him than it was for me. But it definitely showed me how you can spend your whole life building something and you can lose it in a blink of an eye. And it doesn't always have to do with anything that you've done.
Yeah. Obviously, as a consumer, I love having all the music in my pocket, but just going to those stores, I remember like Tower Records and those, and just like perusing through the songs. I love music, so I just loved the physical aspect of just like going there. Were you like big into music growing up or not really?
I think it was like, I wasn't that into it then. And I think it was kind of like the cobbler who like doesn't wear shoes. Yeah. Like I had access to everything and all my friends thought I was crazy that I wasn't taking my dad up on all these opportunities to go to every concert, because he had all of this access.
Right.
But I didn't take him up on it. It's funny because now I go to all these concerts and I'm like, oh, should have done that.
Yeah. When you're out of the businch, you're like, kind of now
totally.
I could start being a consumer.
Did you ever work with him in the business?
No, I was too young. By the time he lost the business, I shouldn't say lost the business, but by the time he exited the business and it had wound down and it wasn't the exit that he was looking for.
Right.
I think I was just going into high school or middle of high school. Maybe I was like a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you remember? I mean, what was the family like temperature like during that time when the business was kind of winding down?
It was really stressful. I know that my dad, this was his passion. It was what he loved. And I think it was really hard for him to see the business that he had grown, going in the opposite direction. And he ended up selling to he had partners. He owned the majority, but the two brothers had owned a minority stake and he ended up selling out to them. And I don't know, it was very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he thought that he was going to do something else and he was excited to, work for, go into something different. But every time he went in for like a job interview, I think it just like kind of sunk his soul a little.
Killed him inside.
Exactly. He didn't want to work for somebody else.
Right. What impact did that have on your career aspirations?
I didn't know it at the time, but I think that it definitely showed me that there's, more opportunity. There isn't just one path. And I think a lot of people grow up thinking like, oh, I must be, somebody who works in corporate America.
Right.
I knew that there were many different paths for me. And I started in corporate America, but then I, kind of quickly started my, entrepreneurial side. Even when I didn't realize that I was starting a business, I started a business. And
yeah, I feel like for a lot of people, that would have been more so, a deterrent into going into entrepreneurship, seeing, like a business not working out after all those years. But it's interesting that obviously now that, we know your path and what happened ultimately, which we'll talk about, that you still chose to do your own thing.
Yes.
Despite knowing,
what could happen. Well, I definitely went in eyes wide open.
Yeah.
And I think that I was always a very conservative founder. I think that's one of the reasons that we didn't take on investment,
right.
that we didn't, we were always very careful to grow sustainably and to make sure that we wanted to have steady growth versus fast and furious. We wanted to keep it on a tight ship, and we did.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm really proud. So my father, he passed away 2 years ago, but I'm really happy that he got to see my journey and, where Beyond Yoga ultimately landed for me. And he was there to see the exit and to see me go on and, be part of the Levi's team. I think that brought him a lot of joy. And so I feel like that was just a little bit of like ending piece for his story.
Right. His exit in a sense of the business, but through you. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So you ended up going to, I think, the University of Florida, right?
Yes. Go Gators.
You go there and I think you studied biology. You wanted to go into science?
I wanted to study biology.
You wanted to study biology.
It was when I went to the preview, which is the orientation before school starts, I went in as thinking I was going to do pre-med. And then when I got there, I was talking to the woman who was the career counselor. And I said, I was reading about this really cool program, this class, it's called WARP, and it's like the intro to art. And, I want to take some of the graphic design classes. And she was like, well, you can't take WARP unless you're going to be a graphic design major.
Right.
And then I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to be a graphic design major. And then she was like, it's really interesting to see how your face lights up when you talk about graphic design versus when you talk about going pre-med or going into on the business path, because those were the two things I was really, contemplating. And so then she explained to me how the program at the University of Florida works. Basically, you take all of these classes, you spend 2 years building out a portfolio, and then you apply to the graphic design program. They only accept 22 people. And if you don't get in, then those credits aren't really transferable to much. Like I could have been a fine arts major or, a painting major, which didn't really feel like, what I wanted to do. But she asked me, she was like, do you feel like you would get in? And I was surprised by my own confidence, but I was like, absolutely. And she was like, then let's sign you up. And all of a sudden I was on that path. And I was actually at this preview. My dad went with me because you get to bring an adult. And I remember thinking he was going to be like, what are you thinking? But he was really supportive. And so that gave me more confidence to continue on that path.
Your eyes lit up, like, when it came to design. Do you know why that was? Like, did you growing up, did you have like any, did you like any affinity towards like design and things like that?
Yeah, I've always been interested in fine arts and painting. I took sewing classes when I was a kid. I did every artistic extracurricular you could do because that's what I enjoy. And I still to this day love painting and drawing. Yeah. I just didn't realize how I was going to turn that into a career.
Yeah. And so I guess when you came out of college, where did you think you could apply that? You worked at People Magazine, right?
I worked at People
Magazine. Was that
Magazine.
your first job out of college?
No. What was my first job out of college? Well, I got 2 part-time graphic design jobs when I moved to the city. And then that was the time of 9/11. So very quickly, lost them both. and tried to find a job. So I remember, so in college, I waitressed to put myself through school. So I just remember walking from my apartment all the way, uptown until I was stopping in every single restaurant, asking if they were looking for anybody. At that time, the city was, pretty much shut down and restaurants were not hiring. But I did, by the time I got up to like North Union Square, I got a waitress job at the Lemon, if anybody knows that place. But that turned out, like, while I was working there, I ended up, every person who I waited on, I was like, do you need a designer? Or, can I do freelance work?
Business development.
Nice.
I was like slipping my card in with every check. But at the same time, I was interviewing at Time Inc. with with Sports Illustrated. I didn't get that job. And then I ended up, through my, slipping everybody my card, getting a job working for a small internet startup company. And when I was working there, it was an interesting experience because I was the only woman on the team. I was definitely the youngest person, and I was logging a lot of hours and making like next to no money. And I remember saying to my boss, would it be possible if I could, cut out at like 5 o'clock on Mondays, just so I could keep my weekend job at the restaurant? Because if you work at a restaurant on the weekends, that's when you actually make money, but they won't give you the shifts on Saturday and Sunday unless you are, taking a crap shift.
Yeah.
So, and I remember he told me, no, you need to stay here as long as I need you to be here every single day. But don't worry about it. Your 20s are for going into debt, and you should try babysitting or something. And I just remember being so insulted. Yeah. And, that really, really drove me to realize, like, I need to do something because people, this guy is not seeing me.
No one's really going to give you the opportunity.
Exactly. I have got to make something because I can't struggle like this, and I'm not going to do what this man is telling me to do. But anyways, I finally got the call from the recruiter over at Time Inc. and they said, we want you to come in and interview for People. And so that ended up working out, and that was great. And I was very happy to leave that web design company.
Yeah. And so when you're at People, what happens in terms of like what maybe early skills did you gain there? And what were you doing?
Well, I was working on the creative services side. So I was creating all of the ad sales material, creating advertorials, so it looks like it's part of the magazine, but it's really an advertisement. And I got a lot of great access to amazing people and really good mentors. But during that time, that's when I actually started my first entrepreneurial endeavor, which is called Unsweetened. And, again, I was still relatively broke, living in New York City, trying to make ends meet. And it was one of my best friend's birthdays. And she, was somebody who had everything. She was in law school. She didn't have any, anything she wanted, she could buy. And I was like, what am I going to get her that's going to be special? So I decided to draw a picture of her. So I did an illustration of Lauren, and then I put it on a t-shirt, and that was my gift to her. And all of our friends were like, they loved it. And so everyone was like, when are you going to do me? And so that became my running gift for all of my friends.
Everyone wanted to wear like a picture of themselves.
Yeah, they wanted an illustration of themselves.
Yeah. There's like just a screen printed t-shirt.
Yeah, I was getting them screen printed. Actually, like figured out how to do it at Kinko's. They could do like a heat transfer. And then ultimately I ended up buying one of these transfer machines, keeping it in my apartment in New York. And I was like sharing an apartment with my friend Lauren, and I was renting like a very small part of it. It was like a partitioned wall, and I was using this whole area like to sleep, but also to manufacture. So after she would go to bed, I would like spread out all my stuff, and I was pressing and making t-shirts. And because when I was working at People, I had a really good cube. I was right in front of the publisher. And so everybody would walk by, and I had the pictures of all my girls up on the wall, and then people would come by and they'd be like, oh, I love your sketch of that girl. She looks like my friend Rita, could I get one? And so I started selling them, and then I started doing, holiday bazaars and little boutiques. And I learned about wholesale. I learned about pricing garments. I learned about, factoring your own time into all of this. So it was a great learning experience.
But were they all just like one of one printed shirts?
Initially, I had like 12 original girls, and then I made, different size runs of these girls, and I had cool packaging, and I loved designing the packaging, and I brought these to the shows. Then when I was at the shows, I started getting people being like, "Oh my goodness, I love this one, but could you make her with blonde hair?" Or could you take that
people
one?
Were buying the shirts of your friends
yes.
on there.
Because they were like, "Oh, your lawyer friend."
They just liked how it looked.
They liked how it looked.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I thought they wanted it for themselves, like their own photo.
No, but then it started where people were like, "Can I customize this?" And at first I was like, "Sure, let's do it." Then I realized what a giant nightmare that is. And I wasn't charging enough for the customization.
What were you charging?
I think these shirts were like $25 or $30. And then if I was going to customize it, I added like $10 more, which just wasn't
right. Not
enough.
Worth your time.
It wasn't worth my time, but it was a great lesson.
Right.
And it was a lesson that I ended up bringing with me to Beyond Yoga because, when you're in the fashion industry, everybody wants an SMU, a special makeup order. And I remember working with my team, and everyone, one of my sales reps was working with Carbon 38, and they were like, "Oh, Carbon wants to do this, and let's design that." And I was like, I'd love to do that, but think about all of the dev work that's going to go into it, the designer's time, the pattern maker's time, sourcing the fabric, researching all of these things. You have to make it worth it. So let's, work the math backwards. How many units do we need to sell to make this work worthwhile? But then on the flip side, you also can say, but this is, reaching a new audience, and we want to be on this website, and it's attracting a different customer base. So you have to weigh those two things.
Well, I feel like that brings up a good point of like the founder or the entrepreneur that's focused on making money, right? The business owner versus the almost like today's startup founder where they're just focused on growth and audience building, and profitability is not necessarily the primary goal. It's more so, let's build an audience, let's get that as big as possible, and then we'll figure out how to capture, them and make some money off of them. And it makes sense because you were saying that it was your own money and you didn't take on investors. So I think that's the mindset difference is I need to make money, right? Like I'll put in the time, but is it making me money or not? Right.
Exactly. And, we weren't running the business with, we weren't chasing an exit. We weren't, trying. I really think that I believed in my heart that I was going to run Beyond Yoga as a private company forever. Like I was almost, thinking of the Mars business and how that's a family business, but it's huge. And I was like, one day that's just what we're going to do. And eventually my children will, start working for this company. And, that's how we.
Well, maybe you can buy it back one day. Who knows?
Well, hopefully it'll be so successful that won't be possible.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, listen up. It's 2024. Are you still using your personal phone number for your startup? One of the most common founder mistakes I see is using your personal phone for business. OpenPhone has completely rethought every detail of what a business phone should look like and do in 2024. OpenPhone makes it super easy to get business phone numbers for your whole team. It works through a beautiful app on your phone or computer and integrates with CRMs like HubSpot and Salesforce. It's the #1 business phone on G2 for customer satisfaction with over 1,700 reviews. And here's a feature that I love personally. With OpenPhone's AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, you can have a summary of your phone call with action items right when you hang up. No more note-taking or forgotten to-dos. What's more is that every employee that's sharing that phone number with you has access to it too. Total recall across your entire team. OpenPhone is already affordable at a starting price of $15 per user per month. But for a limited time, the Founder Hour listeners can get 20% off for 6 months. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. Head to openphone.com/founder to start your free trial and get 20% off.
So speaking of the origin story of Beyond Yoga, you move at some point, came to California for a trip, I think, and then you ended up meeting your co-founder that you started the business with. So tell us about that encounter, why you felt like this would be someone that you should start a business with, and then we'll talk about where the idea for Beyond Yoga even came and that kind of stuff.
Totally. So I feel like I missed a part of my earlier my childhood that
Yeah.
I need to go back
Please.
to. So we were talking about my dad, but we really didn't touch on my mom. And so my mom was a hugely influential person for me as well. My mom is smart and beautiful and, amazing, amazing woman, but she did not see herself that way. And I saw her struggle with body image and, struggled with her weight as long as I can remember. And she was always in this mode of judging herself and judging others. And it was really challenging for me as an individual. And growing up around that and seeing how that impacted me and how it impacted my friends, I feel very fortunate that I survived my childhood with really healthy self-esteem and didn't, fall into the trap that I saw so many people around me with eating disorders and body dysmorphia. When I went to the University of Florida, I saw it was super prevalent there as well. It was shocking that all of these incredible women were not seeing themselves as they are. They were seeing themselves through this distorted lens of they weren't enough.
And Michelle, like today, that's a lot easier to, I think, have those issues because of social media. 20, 30 years ago when social media didn't exist, was it the magazines? Like, was it the commercials? What was it that caused that?
It was everything. It was diet culture. It was the way that, we spoke to each other, the way our moms were speaking to us. It was what was going on in the magazines. So when I worked in publishing, when I worked at People and when I worked at Harper's Bazaar, I saw firsthand all of the photoshopping that was going on. And even if you thought you were looking at a photo of somebody, candidly, a celebrity walking down the street, or
it wasn't so candid.
It is not candid. They have deals, and they're they are manipulating what people look like to erase wrinkles or to elongate body parts. It's crazy, and it just perpetuates this idea of an unrealistic expectation of what women can and should be. And anyways, I found that to be really frustrating. And so that, fast forward, I go out to California. I think that I'm going to really just focus on unsweetened. That was my plan. I moved out, and then I was at a trade show, and I ended up, through friends, getting introduced to Jody, who ended up being my business partner. And when I met Jody, she had the fantastic idea to create an activewear line for women of all shapes and sizes. And when she, told me about her idea, I was immediately lit up.
And what was Jody doing at the time?
What was Jody doing at the time? Jody was trying to start Beyond Yoga. And so when I met her, it was somebody introduced us because they thought I could help, because I had gotten the trademark and done all of the stuff for Unsweetened. They were like, oh, could you show my friend Jody how to do these things? And so I started helping Jody with some of the business angle and some of the, the practical side of things. And then one day, it was very early on. I just had some ideas about what I thought could happen for the business and some ideas of some sketches that would work. And so I sent them to her. And the next morning she called me and she was like, our relationship is about to change. And then pretty much from that point on, I spent the last 18 and a half years building, growing, and leading Beyond Yoga to what it is now.
So Michelle, this is like early 2000s. What was the activewear space like at the time? I mean, we know what it is today, and there's hundreds of brands, thousands of brands. But what was it like at the time?
It was very small. Lululemon had just opened their first store in Santa Monica. So, people were aware. Yoga was starting to grow. People were still not really caring what they wore to the gym. People were, still wearing oversized
vintage t-shirts.
Yes, and it was more like my old t-shirt. Like I'll wear my, my boyfriend's t-shirt. It wasn't like people wanted to really dress up for the gym. And there weren't that many players at that point. I remember Prana was big, Hardtail was really big, and Lulu. Those were the players. that I remember at that time.
Yeah.
What about yoga? Like, I feel like yoga, kind of the big wave came a little bit after that, right? Or was it already kind of starting to? You started seeing it everywhere.
I'm trying to remember. We've always been beyond yoga.
Mhm.
So even though yoga was like the founding principle, it was the idea to go beyond yoga. But we did see yoga popping up everywhere. Jody is a big yogi, so that was a major part of the impetus on her side. But we were also seeing the rise of studio fitness and all sorts of over the Zumba and Pure Barre and just so many.
Pilates.
Pilates is my absolute favorite.
So how did the name come out? Like, was it something that Jody already had?
Yes, that was Jody had a PR company before, and she called it Beyond PR. So then she was teaching yoga, and she called that Beyond Yoga.
Yeah. So when you two get together, what is like the idea in terms of launching the first sort of line of these products? Like, what were you really trying to create, and then obviously branch from there?
We were trying to create clothing that was for women of all shapes and sizes. If you went out in the market at that point and you picked up a size large, nobody at home can see what I'm doing, but it's very small.
Yeah.
And people weren't catering for anybody who wasn't the, typical tall, thin yoga body. Right. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to make sure that people felt great and, wearing their clothing regardless of, where they were in that moment. We wanted them to feel like we didn't want you to feel like you had to exercise to fit into your exercise clothing. So, and also we wanted to make things that were versatile. Like, we recognize the fact that people's days are ever changing, and you might not always have an opportunity, to go to the gym before work, or you may have a million things you're going to do, dropping off your kids and, going to run errands, and there might be just like a break in your day. So if we could create clothing that kind of spanned from workout, but beyond. And so we had layering pieces. So you looked put together. You didn't look like you were going to work out, but you could pull off a layer.
Was athleisure even a concept at the time? Or, what was the category? It was just activewear?
Yeah, I don't think I heard the word athleisure for quite some time.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm like, I don't remember hearing that.
Yeah, no, not in 2005.
The last 10 years or so, that's been something that's been more prevalent. It's like athleisure, everything's athleisure now.
Well, it became a category at some point. I don't think it was a category. It was just maybe a trend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how different or similar was that first product kind of launch to what it is today?
So some of the first products that we had, there's a couple of them that you can still purchase. Our first products, we had our original yoga pant. It was the SP1001, and now we have the SD 1111. But it's basically the same cut pant made of a different fabric, which is our space dye. So we started off with this very soft transitional fabric that was a solid called Supplex, and down the road, we ended up, I found this amazing fabric called space dye, which is really the foundation of what Beyond Yoga is today. But we still have that original, boot cut yoga pant, but the only difference is it's in a new fabric, the space dye, and it has a high waist. Because when we started, all of our waistbands were 3 inches, and then we evolved and we had 3 inches and 5 inches, and then the 5-inch really stuck around.
Yeah. So as athleisure becomes a category, more brands enter the space. How was that experience for Beyond Yoga? Like, you had started prior to that, so I don't. In business, sometimes there's like a first mover, second mover advantage of like capturing the market and consumers and that kind of stuff. Did it really start feeling like there was intense competition in the space, or did it feel like you guys were in your lane, you guys were doing something different, and then all these other brands were trying to kind of be in that space, but everyone was kind of playing their own game?
I would say yes. We were focused on what we were doing, and our goal was really to make the best product, to make it. We were so focused on our consumer and making amazing product that's going to make her feel amazing, that is going to be versatile, that's going to be soft. We weren't as focused on the competition. And I think that was, I think it was really important to how our story went. And, you could look back and ask, would we have been better off if we had done things differently? But I'm happy with where everything landed.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know, if you do one thing differently, how the whole story could have gone in a completely different direction. But I'm glad that we weren't super focused on the competition. I think that's how, if everybody's staring at what everybody else is doing, I think you just end up having a lot of repetitive,
Right.
Product in the market. And we weren't. We were doing our own thing. And I think that served us well. And, a lot of people actually ended up copying what we were doing. And, we were first to market with the space dye. And I consider that, imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Right.
So I'll take it.
Early on, what was your particular focus for the business?
So early on, I really dove into absolutely everything and anything I could get my hands on. So immediately I started with the product, picking the color palettes. I really got into working with the pattern makers. I was the person who sketched all of our initial designs, from, I would say, from the first season on, until we ended up hiring a designer. I'm trying to remember what year we brought in our first true designer, because there was a designer who Jody was working with before we had met. And then when I joined her, I kind of took over that role a bit. But I managed the sales team. I helped build the sales team.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, we started off with 3 sales reps. They were external and they were really focused on the active space. So they worked with yoga studios and gyms, and
this was to get into retailers.
Yeah. We were wholesale first.
Got it.
So I remember when we decided to build our first website, it was almost like an afterthought to wholesale, because we really didn't want to do anything that was going to upset our wholesale partners. So we would offer them everything first, and then anything that was left over at the end of the season after they had filled in what they had sold through, then we would put it online, right, because we wanted to prioritize that wholesale business first. And I still really believe in wholesale. I think it's an incredibly valuable marketing tool. And it's actually a very profitable part of the business. When I look at, the P&L of our wholesale business versus our direct to consumer, wholesale has always, if you look at it standalone and attribute all of the, marketing and people and everything that goes into it, wholesale is still a very important part of the business.
Stupid question, but how does that work? The wholesale part. I mean, when you say wholesale, are you trying to basically put your product in different retailers, but under your brand name?
Exactly.
Got it. It's not like a white label.
And are you dealing with the retailers directly or like distributors mostly?
Directly.
Got it. Okay.
So we were approached many times for white label opportunities, but I almost always turned those down.
Gotcha, yeah.
Because we were working on building the brand.
Right.
So if it didn't have our brand name on it, it wasn't worth my time.
Right.
And I didn't want to give away our secret sauce, because our fit and our fabric was why
people bought it,
why people were coming to us, and also our brand values. So I wanted to make sure that we kept that really sacred. And then we were selling. So I had the 3 sales reps who were selling into, directly to the yoga studios. And then I was working on opening accounts as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was always under the Beyond Yoga name. But we built out an incredibly diverse network of wholesale partners. And I turned down partners all the time, because you want to make sure you're not overly saturated. And you want to make sure that you're, if your goal is like ours was at Beyond Yoga to run a full price business, you don't want to go, sell somewhere where they're going to start discounting
Right.
your product all the time. And a lot of the, big box
Like Marshalls or
retailers,
something.
oh, definitely no Marshalls. But even if you're, some of the department stores, like we have a great business with Bloomingdale's, but I remember in the beginning being very concerned because I know that Bloomingdale's has a lot of friends and family sales, and I didn't want to undercut our other wholesale partners. And eventually, when we had our own website, I didn't want to undercut our website either. But as you grow, you have the power to negotiate those things. And so when we went into Bloomingdale's, we said we need to be excluded from the friends and family sale. And they weren't happy about it. But when they want your brand, they'll do it.
Yeah.
And at this point, you're still just using your own capital, like to help feed the business.
The entire time. We did, we ended up getting a factor. Do you guys know about factors?
No.
So basically what a factor is they'll buy the invoice from you.
The
So
bank.
if you have
They'll guarantee it, basically.
they'll guarantee it. So if you have an order from
Bloomingdale's.
And so I say, okay, I've got this, $5,000 order from Bloomingdale's. I will give it to the factor and they will let me borrow against that money now.
Right.
So I can start producing the goods, because the way it works is I'm going to make these goods, probably it's going to take 6 months, from the time I'm buying the fabric and cutting and doing all of these things to produce the order.
Right.
And then once I have that, those goods,
Fulfilled.
then I fulfill it, I ship it. Then they have terms of how long until they're going to pay. So it can
Pay
be
you.
to pay us.
So it's kind of like an advance in a way to get you to.
Because
production.
instead that now they'll pay the factor,
Got it.
and the factor takes on
Meaning
the risk.
Bloomingdale's will pay the factor.
Exactly.
And does the factor get anything in return for that? Like an extra, like a percentage on top of that? Okay.
So it's like almost like a hard money loan, where
In a way.
you're
Kind of
basi-
like just giving you money in advance to
yeah,
get your production.
it's a loan
going.
in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Feeling stressed, struggling to sleep at night, or just need a little health boost? Look no further than Magnesium Breakthrough from BioOptimizers. It's the only supplement on the market that combines seven types of magnesium in one bottle, each with unique benefits for your body. Whether you need help with muscle recovery, heart health, or energy production, Magnesium Breakthrough has you covered. Plus, it's all natural, vegan, and gluten-free. Head to biooptimizers.com/founderhour and use the code FOUNDERHOUR for 10% off your order. Don't miss out on the #1 selling magnesium supplement.
When did your own retail component become a part of your strategy?
So we built our website. Again, that happened early on, but we weren't thinking about it as a major part of our business. I think we quickly shifted and realized how important direct to consumer is, and how it was an opportunity to really control the brand message and to speak, directly with the customer, get all of that real-time feedback. So I can't even remember a time when we, didn't have the website. I think, we must have been in like
e-commerce
2000.
really started to take off like in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even in 2008, we had our own website, and I remember doing, I remember having like a summer solstice sale, but we were always very particular to make sure that we were, showing models of all shapes and sizes. We really wanted to make sure that everything was full price. I remember I didn't even want to have a sale section on the website, and I remember my team trying to talk me into it. And we only, did a sale like once a year. We did the summer solstice sale, and then we would do a Black Friday sale twice a year. But then when we actually opened our own brick and mortar stores, that didn't happen until we were part of Levi's.
Okay. So that
So more
came
recently.
That's
much more
very
recently.
recent.
Yeah. So along the way, I think I read that your partner, like your life partner, was involved in the business. So how did that happen? And at the time, were you even married when you started Beyond Yoga?
I was not married when
Okay.
I started Beyond Yoga. And then I would say when I met my now husband, Jesse, his background is in finance and in operations. And so when we started dating, he was, always interested in the business because that's something we have in common. We love to, talk shop. And he was always in and around and a great cheerleader for me. And when we finally got married, because we were dating for over 4 years before he proposed, it was a source of annoyance to me. But once he,
and you're still not over it.
I mean, I'm still a little annoyed.
Yeah. But like you said earlier, like if you changed one little thing, you might have not sold to Levi's.
Exactly. But anyways,
so good job, Jesse.
Good job, Jesse. So once we got married, I hired him. I was like, all right, now that I know that you're really in it, I want you, you're helping all these other companies grow and scale. I'd really like you to help me. And he was like, I'll help you for a little bit. And I was like, thank you. And, basically he came in, I think he fell in love with Beyond Yoga and the building of a business. And he stayed with me. And I would really say that Jesse was my business partner for the last decade. We did, we ran the business together. He was our CFO and our COO. And we always joke, he says that he did everything that I didn't want to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about 2021, which is, I think that was the year that you ended up selling the business to Levi's.
Yes.
And I think I read that came through a cold LinkedIn message.
I think it was in like October of 2020. I got an email from Levi's from a woman at LS & Co. And I initially thought that she wanted to get on a call. I thought that we were going to talk about a potential brand collaboration, which I was really excited about. I thought the idea of partnering with a brand like Levi's would really put us on the map and how cool, right? So I was super excited to take the call. I spoke to her on Black Friday of 2020 and we had a great conversation and we, aligned on the fact that Beyond Yoga and Levi's had a lot of brand synergy. And she was like, great, I'd love to introduce you to our CFO. And I was like, that's an interesting next step for a brand collaboration. But I ended up talking to him. He was lovely as well. I started talking, they started having me talk to a bunch of different people on the executive leadership team at Levi's. And eventually they said, we're thinking about either going into active ourselves, building it, or
think about going beyond denim.
Exactly. Or buying. And I just gave them the advice. I was like, I think it's smarter to buy. And it wasn't because I was trying to sell our company. It was really what I believed, because I've seen so many companies, just throw up, an activewear collection. Oh, we'll just get our designers to, do this. And it's a different skill set. It's different fabrication. And then it's also a different type of brand building.
Different culture too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people think it's a lot easier than it is to make, a great activewear brand. And, one of the things that I think was why Beyond Yoga was so successful is not only is it, our brand values and our fit and our fabric, but also the fact that we started so grassroots with all of these, yoga studios and Pilates studios. And, we were really at the forefront of all of that. And people remember us as kind of the OG. Even when Lululemon wouldn't sell to the studios, we were selling to the studios. So I think most people have discovered us through studios initially. And anyways, I gave them that advice, and they were upfront with me. They said, we're actually talking to a couple different companies, but we'd love to explore the conversation. And so,
did you believe them? It sounds like a bluff.
Right? You never know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And all conversations you have to be guarded. You have to make sure that you're not giving away too much information while still being, giving enough to let people be interested.
It's
and
like dating, right?
Exactly.
It takes 4 years. Sometimes.
Yeah. This didn't take quite as long. So, relatively quickly, they said they were interested in buying the company, and they wanted to buy it outright. And we, went through a due diligence process. We did not hire a banker at that point because
why give away a fee if you don't need to?
You said it, not me. And so, Jesse kind of acted as our banker, and he, had that background. And so that worked out well for us. And then I, negotiated the, terms of the deal.
Who threw out the first number?
They did.
And
The best.
was it a lot lower?
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that.
I'm trying.
But I will say that I'm very proud of where we ended. I feel that they got an amazing deal on an incredible company.
Mhm.
And I feel like we got a great valuation. And, we were in a position where I was not looking to sell. At that point, we were extremely profitable. And I knew there was so much more that we could do. So I
Yeah.
wasn't looking to offload something.
Yeah.
I was excited to continue to build this, and I, saw the potential. So we also weren't going to give it away.
Yeah. So you felt like, I think we talked about early on, like this like legacy brand of like, outliving you and that kind of stuff, like that you felt like you were just on that path anyways, and you were just going to continue to run it.
Yeah, that's how I saw it. But when Levi's reaches out to you,
Right.
it just changes. It changes the game.
It also like almost not legitimizes, that's the wrong word, but it affirms like what you've done for almost 2 decades, right? Like, it's like
Absolutely.
I've done something right and others are recognizing it. Whether I need that or not is a different story.
Exactly. And we had been approached by many other people over the years, and we always turned them down. Like, we never even got into the conversations, or very rarely ever got far in the conversations. But, this was different. It was Levi's. I recognized the fact that this is a 170-year-old company
Right.
that would really, this would solidify our legacy. And, I can't help but think back on my father and his experience. And I didn't want, to ever wake up and feel like, oh my gosh, we missed an opportunity to, really solidify this, not only for me and for our customers, but also for our team.
Yeah.
And Levi's is a great organization. They have so many, amazing benefits and career opportunities. And I knew this was going to be so good for my team.
Mm.
And I felt like, they had all taken such a big bet on me, and the company, and, spent their careers with me. And I wanted to be able to give them this amazing opportunity. And I feel really good about that.
Yeah. So you stayed on as CEO a few years after that, and then
Yes.
until February of this year, I think?
Correct.
When you stepped down. Was that just part of the deal, or you just kind of wanted to help with the transition, or what was the thought behind that?
When we originally made the transition, or during the acquisition, it was very exciting because I wanted the opportunity to work at Levi's too. I, had a lot of respect, still have a lot of respect for that company and the brand that they've built. And they asked me, not only to stay on as CEO of Beyond Yoga, which I absolutely wanted to do, not only because I was excited about what we were going to do, but I wanted to make sure that the transition went well and nothing got, lost in translation. But then they also asked me to join the executive leadership team at LS & Co. And that's basically like 12 people who, are the top level of management, reporting into the CEO and the board. And that was a really flattering opportunity and exciting because, when you've been running your own business for at that point it was 16 years, I just want to continue to learn and evolve. And so I was really excited to have that opportunity, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. But, the decision to step down was a tough one, but, and we didn't talk about COVID at all.
Yeah.
But, we had kind of just weathered COVID, where at a moment, I thought that we might potentially lose the entire business. Then, things turned around and our business grew quicker than ever. But we'd gone through that roller coaster. I feel like running Beyond Yoga was kind of, I was sprinting a marathon for the last 18 and a half years. And, building the business, then surviving COVID, then the whole Levi's, conversation. When we went through that, we didn't, we were still work from home. So when they reached out to me, Jesse and I really negotiated and handled that entire due diligence on our own. I told you there were no bankers. We had a lawyer, but I didn't involve my team in this because I didn't want to distract them.
Right. I was going to actually ask you that. It was did they know about it?
Yeah, I didn't tell anyone because like you said, did you believe this was going to happen? Right. It all just felt like a little too fairy tale, how amazing would it be for this to happen? But I didn't want to distract my team because at the end of the day, I was still running everything as if this was not going to go through. And I wanted to make sure we were hitting all of our numbers. And I also didn't want anybody to be upset, if at the end it didn't work, sure, we would be disappointed, but I didn't want my team to deal with that disappointment either. So I didn't share this with my senior leadership team until maybe a week before it was all public. And I was, because of, the rules of publicly traded companies, I couldn't share with my entire team until I think it was the day of. It was pretty crazy.
And how big is this team? Or was the team at the time?
The team at that time was around 70 people.
Okay.
90% female.
Amazing. All in LA.
Majority in LA. We did have some remote team members, and we had even pre-pandemic, and then we had grown some even further with that during the pandemic.
Customers are rushing to your store. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. Shopify POS is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/founderhour. Once again, go to shopify.com/founderhour to take your retail business to the next level today.
Michelle, was there a discussion with Levi's about keeping the Beyond Yoga name and brand, or making it, or just basically just absorbing it and then having it like Levi's Active or something like that?
No.
It was always to keep Beyond Yoga.
Yes.
Yeah.
They never, they were buying us because of the brand we had built. So I think their goal has always been to, celebrate what we've done and augment it and enhance it and help take it to the next level.
Right.
And that was why it was such an appealing, acquisition. And then also Levi's is a great company. Their, whole philosophy is, principles over profits, which I really resonate with. And so I felt like I was giving my baby to somebody who was going to, uphold the very similar values to what we had always had in the 18 years of building this business.
Yeah. So for 18 years, you built this brand, and then, Levi's being the brand that it is. And, it's been, how many years they've been in business? Long time, right? And they've been able to sustain.
Is it since the gold rush?
Yeah, they're over 170 years old.
And so, for those listening that maybe are like in the early stages of wanting to build a brand, it doesn't have to be a clothing brand, but any brand. I guess, what did you learn about brand building that allowed Beyond Yoga to be so sustainable over time and continue to just stay, a strong brand?
I think it's really important to be clear about what your mission is and why that brand is set apart, and really take that into consideration with everything you do. So, it's not just the publicly facing things that we did, but it's also, obviously the stores that we allowed to sell Beyond Yoga, the people that we brought onto our team. Like, you need to make sure you have like-minded people, because they're not like-minded, but people who
like valued.
People who are aligned with the brand value, because they're out in the world and they're your brand ambassadors. And, the brand flows through every part. As you're designing a collection, the design team can come up with something that's amazing, but if it doesn't, hold true to your brand values, then it doesn't belong on your line sheet. And that was always hard. But I think as a leader, you really need to feel comfortable saying no. And that is a skill that I have practiced a lot. Some people say I'm too quick to say no. But it's important to really stay focused. And one thing I see happen all the time is companies get too excited about different ideas, and they expand well past what their core product is, to a point where they start getting they dilute their perspective and their attention, and then their main product suffers.
What's an example of that, maybe throughout the years, that was presented to you where you said no, and you're thankful now looking back that you said no?
I mean, there were tons of opportunities to go into lower end retailers that would have been more mass, that would have driven a lot of top line revenue. But I knew that wasn't I knew that our ultimate goal was, to stay full price, to stay elevated, and to have our own stores and our own website, and while still keeping our very important wholesale partners.
Yeah.
But I knew that if we went downstream, it's a very quick race to the bottom, and it is hard to get out of it. So we turn down opportunities all the time. I remember one time we had to say, actually, this wasn't something that we turned down. But one thing that didn't work out for us, that I was happy in the end that didn't work out, we were being considered for Oprah's Favorite Things back in the day, when that was like the thing that defined brands. And we came in runner-up to Lululemon for their Align legging, or maybe it was their Wonder Under. I think it was their Wonder Under back in the day. And I was devastated. But I remember talking to Jesse, and he said to me, he was like, "You were not ready for it. Your website couldn't handle it. You would have disappointed so many customers. You didn't have enough product to back up the demand. You would have turned off so many people who were trying to discover the brand, and your first experience with all of those new customers would have been negative instead of positive, and that's the exact opposite of what we wanted."
Mm-hmm. So we've been doing this podcast for a long time, and one of the questions we always get asked is, who's your favorite guest? And it's hard to pick out of like 250 plus guests on which one our favorites are. But it does happen to be, and I feel like Pat and I are in agreement on this, is that the female founders always have a better story, better journey. And that's because they're, wives, mothers, like they have so many other responsibilities other than founder. And it's so much more difficult to be a founder and leader and whatnot when you are a woman, especially in any world, in any country in the world. So how are you able to manage all the different, roles that you had throughout the years?
Thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate it. I was talking to a female founder the other day. I had coffee with her, and she was talking about how she's not ready, to have a baby yet, because, she's still really focused on her business. And I was like, you're never not going to be focused on your business, and there's never a great time. But when you have a baby, you just grow. It's almost as if you're growing a human inside of you. You're also growing another arm. It's like somehow you just figure it out how to take on more. And, people always say that they're nervous when they're going to have a second child. They're like, how am I going to, I have all my love. I don't want to divide my love from my one baby. And I'm like, no, your heart just grows. You just have more capacity. And somehow, as I've become a wife, as I've become a mother, as I've become a leader of a larger organization, you just grow, and you learn how to be more efficient with your time and how to ruthlessly prioritize what you're going to do. You are a lot less likely to get, caught up in a non-important conversation.
Bullshit conversation.
Exactly. Because you know that you have, very important things that you need to do.
Can you run us through like a day, like during that time where it was like you have 2 kids, or like run us through a day like when you had 2 kids and you were still on your own, no Levi's, like what did that look like?
Yeah. So children wake up whenever they want. My children have always been early risers. So waking up with them, breakfast, doing all the things. I have always been fortunate to have a nanny. If you don't have an extra, set of hands, if it's not a family member, or, if you can't bring somebody on, it's very challenging to be able to handle it all.
Right.
So I want to make sure I'm clear. I wouldn't have been able to do everything I was doing without somebody helping me with my children. And also my husband, Jesse, is like the most active equal partner in parenting. So that's also extremely helpful. But I am definitely the morning person. So I would do the mornings with the kids. Usually somebody would, our nanny or Jesse would take over for me at some point so I could go and work out. I've always prioritized working out. It's really, it was harder when the kids were really young, but once they were in school, it was a lot easier to start getting that workout in before I started the day. And I always feel like that made me a little bit sharper and a little bit more focused. And having it done in the beginning of the day just like got it off my mind instead of feeling like I had something weighing on me to try to squeeze in later. Then go to the office, and every single day was different, which is part of what I have loved about it. Whether it was design fittings, marketing meetings, sales calls, anything, every day was always different, but meeting with the team and being involved in everything all day. And I would try to leave by 5:30 so I could get home by 6. And when I would walk in the door, I made sure that I was not walking in on my phone. Everything had to be put away. Any conversation I was on as I was driving home, was wrapped up. And my team knew they could reach me if there was an emergency. But in general, from 6 until I got my kids to sleep at 8 o'clock, that was my time. And don't bother me unless there's a real emergency. And generally, there are no emergencies that can't
what
wait.
Emergencies would have come up.
I mean, if the building caught on fire,
right. That's the building owner's problem. Unless you own the building.
We did not own the building.
Not your problem.
But, in general, I really held that time very sacred. So I had the mornings with my kids before I left for work, and then the time from, dinner, bath time, bedtime, snuggles. That's incredibly important. And then at 8 o'clock, I would go back to work, and I would work from home. My husband and I, we share an office upstairs, and we would, just work until whatever we needed to get done was done. And some nights, we were done by 10, and some nights we were done by 3 a.m. And you just never knew what it was going to be. But I always tried my best to boomerang my emails to make sure, that I scheduled them so it wouldn't go into my team's inbox in the, in the middle of the night. I didn't need my team to be responding to me during that time.
So
and
cool.
I always tried to explain to them if I've, messed up, unless I text you or something, you don't need to respond to me in that moment. Anything I'm sending you can wait until tomorrow morning, unless if I need you, I will reach out to you. It will not be, you will know. It won't be, through email. And then
I know at some point you and Jesse started like a family foundation. What are some causes that you're really passionate about that you're also involved in outside of, work?
Great question. So that was one of the things that we did after the acquisition. And there are a bunch of things that we've been involved in. We have interesting health issues throughout our entire family. So trying to support different hospitals and different organizations. My niece has, a condition. And so we wanted to help set up, at the hospital that she's going to get infusions, we wanted to help set up a better system for kids who are going in there to make it a more pleasant experience. We've been involved in, just anything that supports women, that supports, diversity and inclusion, and really that help with different, issues that are near and dear to our family. But we're passionate about a lot of things, and one organization that this is not part of the foundation, but this is just an investment. One organization that I'm really excited about that we're invested in is a company called Cooler Heads, and it's a cooling cap system for people who are experiencing chemotherapy to help them keep their hair. And when I first heard about it, I was thinking about it more through the lens of like, oh yeah, because people want to keep their hair because they want to keep your hair. But then when I was talking to the founder who has, gone through this herself, when she explained it to me, I hope nobody here has to experience cancer, but if you do, the idea that you all of a sudden, when you're going through chemo, if you lose your hair, it's like a invitation to the entire world to know what you're going through. And so I love what Kate is doing, because it helps keep the privacy of the people who are going through chemo treatment, and they can share when they want to. They're not forced to share. And when you're going through something like that, you take on everybody else's feelings. And so I just thought that was really, an important business. And so that's one company that I'm really excited about.
You mentioned enjoying painting. Where do you draw inspiration from, and what's your most proudest painting?
Ooh, I love to paint when I can see something. I'm not somebody who, has a vision in my head and can just create it. So one of my favorite things is post-acquisition. We planned a big family vacation, and we went and we traveled for 6 weeks throughout Europe with our family, and we had different friends and family come and visit us at different locations. And then every stop, different destination we had, Jesse had it set up so that I had painting supplies, and it was a big surprise for me. So I got to paint wherever we were on vacation. So I got to paint the French countryside and of the beautiful trees in Italy, and those are some of my favorite paintings.
That's awesome. So it's like a collection that you have. That's great.
Yeah, I'm curious. You're still super young. You've obviously had a super successful career. I mean, have you started to think about, or when will you start thinking about what's next, if there is a next? I mean, there doesn't have to be, but what does kind of the next few years hold for you, if you were to plan it out?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So some of the advice that people who have been in this situation have shared with me is take time, celebrate the win, which is what I'm trying to do at this point. I'm really happy to be able to, spend time with my family, focus on health and wellness, but also to be involved with other female founders. But the advice that they've given me is don't jump into anything. Don't start another company. Don't join a board. Don't take a job for at least a year, if not a year and a half. And so I've kind of made that mental commitment to myself. But I am not a person who knows how to sit still. Yeah. And I really enjoy meeting female founders. And I feel like I have a lot to share. And I also feel like I don't really need anything back from anyone. And so I am just an open book resource right now. And I've really enjoyed leaning into the Female Founder Network in LA. I have met so many incredible women over the past, I think it's 6 months at this point, and learned about so many amazing businesses. And I just really enjoyed chatting with them. Sometimes they just need someone to vent to. Sometimes they want advice. Sometimes they might just need a connection. And I'm happy to do any of that. So that's what's kind of filling my cup right now.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they have men's stuff now, because it's but we walked into the store and I was like, wow, there's men's stuff. I had no idea.
I didn't even realize you were wearing
I
our
know,
men's
there you go.
t-shirts.
Yeah.
We designed that for Jesse. So,
perfect.
but isn't
Well,
it?
thanks, Jesse. Jesse's done a lot of good things so far. I mean,
He's an amazing guy.
yeah,
That's why I married him.
there you go.
Well, we're excited to see what comes next for you, and we appreciate you coming here and sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you guys invited me, and I appreciate you making the time. So thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
The statements made in our ad reads are for informational purposes only. The products discussed are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before starting any new supplement, especially if you have pre-existing medical conditions or taking medication.